our system really can't just adopt a lock them up and throw away the key when they're arrested responses at this time. So how do we deal with this flow of people who still come into our criminal justice system? To give you a perspective, I have to talk a little bit about what our criminal courts were like and what they were doing in 2019 BC. And BC here means before coronavirus. As you may know, my office covers 3 counties. At any given time, I have 81 lawyers working for me. The state has about 125 attorneys with their office. I have 5 attorneys in the Nassau County office, 9 attorneys in the Clay County office, and the other 65 or so attorneys work in the main office here in Jacksonville. So every day of the year, what does my office do? My office staffs 2 sessions of a first appearance court at the jail to handle bond hearings for individuals who've been arrested. Basically, the law requires that they have such a hearing within 24 hours of their arrest. And on any given day of a week, we will have 8 felony courtrooms running with huge calendars. Each of those are usually staffed with 4 attorneys from my office. In addition to the felony courts, there will be 7 to 9 county court divisions running their calendars, handling misdemeanors and criminal traffic infractions. And I usually have 1 attorney assigned to each of those divisions. I'm then also required to staff the juvenile courts for all those little youngins out there who've gotten themselves in scrapes serious enough to be taken to the detention center. Finally, my office also has to staff courts on a regular basis for people who are being subject to a mental health commitment under the Florida's Baker Act. So that's kind of how things work on a regular daily basis. Every Monday, we would have 200 to 500 citizens who are summoned down to the courthouse to serve as prospective jurors. Juries would normally be chosen on Mondays and trials would be held during the week. On a daily basis, our lawyers would appear in their courts to handle bond hearings, arraignments, motions hearings, many times enter pleas to resolve cases. In late January, we started hearing early reports about a virus breaking out in China that was spreading rapidly. By late January and into early February, the virus was spreading rapidly to other parts of the world. And so alarms started to be raised about the possible spread of this virus to the United States. In the 3rd week of February, my office and all the public defender offices and state attorney's office received some of our first emails from the Justice Administrative Commission in Tallahassee concerning the coronavirus. At this point, I made requests for additional cleaning of my offices to the city, basically asking them to adopt the same sort of practices that you would see handled on cruise ships to keep the noroviruses in check. Wiping down handles, elevator buttons, handrails, and things of that nature. I also ordered additional cleaning materials for the office, still thinking everything was going to be okay. We started sending out emails to all of my staff, setting forth the general guidelines that we were hearing. If you're feeling sick, stay home. Sneeze into the crook of your arm, wash your hands regularly, all of those things. Still thinking that the virus would be contained, I left on a trip to Peru with my wife and my daughter's family for spring break on Monday, March 9th. Just about the time we took off from Miami, Governor DeSantis made his first pronouncements regarding COVID-19. And while we were gone, I monitored the progress of the virus and through the internet, the various activity from the state about the virus. And it became very clear very quickly that more drastic actions needed to be taken. By Friday of that week, that was Friday the 13th, the Florida Supreme Court entered its first administrative order regarding the emergency procedures to be followed due to the coronavirus. Essentially, they suspended all jury trials and suspended all court proceedings except those that were considered to be essential court proceedings. And a large part of what we do are essential court proceedings. At this point, I directed my office to begin implementing plans to have our attorneys and staff work remotely. Now, one of the fortunate things about how my office is set up is that most of our case files are now maintained electronically. Additionally, we have 30 video conferencing units at the jail, which our attorneys can use to interview and talk with our clients who are in custody from their computers. So this saves our attorneys a lot of time. They don't have to leave the office, drive down, find parking, and go through the admission process at the jail to see clients. They could just call up one of the units, call the jail, and they'll pull the client, and so we can talk with our client. So those were two things that really helped us to be able to start working remotely: electronic files and access to our in-custody clients through our what we call our Polycom system. I returned to the United States on Monday, March 16th, and I was very fortunate, I will tell you, very fortunate to be able to get out of Peru when I did, but that's another story in itself. I was back in the office Tuesday morning, March 17th. By this point, the Florida Department of Corrections announced that it would not be accepting any more prisoners from county jail facilities. How this works is that if someone is sentenced to a year or less, they serve their time in a county jail facility. If they're sentenced to more than a year, and this is limited to felonies, they are sent from the county jail facility to the Florida Department of Corrections and placed at one of their facilities. So when Department of Corrections made this announcement, it meant that anyone who had already been sentenced locally to prison would not be sent to a state prison facility and would remain in the county jail. It also meant that any defendants who were about to be sentenced to a state prison would remain in the county jail for the foreseeable future. So here's the situation we were confronted with on March 17th. Our local Duval jail was designed to hold approximately 2,100 people. By March 17th, we had 3,025 people being held in the jail. So they were a third again over capacity, or half again over capacity. Individuals who were still being arrested, but there was no real provision for handling first appearance court by video or other alternative means. Jury trials had been discontinued, so one of the factors which normally pushes the resolution of criminal cases was gone. The 8 felony and 79 misdemeanor courts that had been up and running almost every day had to be discontinued, and all of the cases were passed for 2 weeks, thinking this would all be over in 2 weeks, just by memo. The reason for this is that if you've ever been to a regular court proceeding, it is the farthest thing from social distancing that you can imagine. It's just everybody's there. It's a hubbub. It's just a large number of people, and even the courtrooms are large, a large number of people in too small a space. A meeting was quickly scheduled between my senior staff and Ms. Nelson's senior staff on the afternoon of Wednesday, March 18th. And this meeting had a number of purposes. First of all, was to see how we could possibly relieve the overcrowding conditions at the jail. Hang on just a second, I lost my track. The overcrowding condition at the jail was important to resolve because the jail was very concerned that it might become a hot spot for the spread of the virus. There's no way to have social distancing of any type in a correctional facility. And so they were very concerned, particularly with the overcrowding getting worse. The second primary issue was how are we going to deal with the ever increasing number of cases that needed to be handled? So in preparation for this meeting, I put together a list of things and suggestions that we could deal with. And when we got to the meeting, Ms. Nelson and her staff had some of their own. Amazingly, a lot of our suggestions by each staff were very similar in nature, talking about trying to give emphasis on releasing misdemeanors on their own recognizance, also releasing individuals charged with lower level felonies that were not violent felonies on their own recognizance, giving additional consideration to people over the age of 60 or those with medical conditions that might make them particularly vulnerable to the virus. After this meeting, we kind of put together where our mutual beliefs laid, and then we met on the next afternoon with the chief judge and IT representatives and other people in the court system. This was my very first Zoom meeting I attended. Ms. Nelson and I presented our outline of our discussions to reduce the jail population to the chief judge, and it generally was received well. During these discussions, an understanding was also reached between the chief judge and my office, whereby the courts would start utilizing some of our video conferencing units at the jail for the purpose of running essential court proceedings. Between that Thursday afternoon and the following morning, we had established a video system where inmates could appear at their first appearance hearings via Zoom. Basically, they would be brought into one courtroom at the jail. There would be a laptop there with Zoom set up. Over in the courthouse, the judge would be in front of their computer on Zoom. State attorney and public defender would also be in the courtroom. So everybody was able to social distance, so to speak, and run first appearance courts. That progressed into us establishing remote hookups between two more courtrooms at the courthouse and our video conferencing units at the jail to run felony arraignments and to run a special calendar to resolve cases, primarily focusing on cases where the disposition involved a sentence of time served or basically a probationary sentence. At the present time, we're running first appearance court every day, one felony division that handles nothing but pleas to resolve cases, and then two separate felony court dockets that handle arraignments, bond motions, and the disposition of cases for 8 felony divisions. Well, putting everything together for court has been a bit cumbersome. All in all, it's worked pretty well. Every day we have to work out issues to try to make it work a little bit better, but we are satisfying the dictate to provide the essential court functions. Case counts are still climbing. Everybody's being concerned about what we can do to try to keep up with the pace of cases coming in, but I think overall we've done well. We set all this up thinking we might be doing this for 2 to 3 weeks. It looks like it's going to be 2.5 months. So we could get past the peak of this and maybe start resuming some regular courts. All in all, I think what we're doing is not a long-term substitute for court, but I'm proud of my staff and the way our office has worked with the state attorney's office to work through dealing with all of this. So that's kind of what we're doing, folks, and so I'm open for questions. No questions, I can go.
Charlie, this is William. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are you telling me with there's so few traffic accidents that major insurance companies are doing massive rebates? Are you telling me that the crime rate has not had a dramatic fall with this isolation?
I don't know about the overall rate. I know that the state attorney's office has had communication with the sheriff in terms of lower level offenses to try to do more notices here to keep them coming through the jail. I don't sense that our first appearance numbers have dropped a whole lot, so people are still getting arrested. In terms of the civil side, I've had really no involvement. There's a whole other part of the court system, and that's the civil side, family court, injunctions, things like that, which the chief judges had to deal with. I don't know. I think they are using more and more Zoom procedures in order to get those things done.
So Charlie, I've got a question. You mentioned that the the jail population was like 3,100 or something like that.
Yeah.
Where is it now?
I haven't gotten a number the last week and a half. It's below that. I think it's in the mid 2000s. It's still too high. Fortunately, we thought there was one positive case in the jail about a week and a half ago. That proved not to be the case. So we've been very fortunate. There have been no cases there because I think everybody's concerned. If you get it into that environment, it's just going to run rampant. So that's why we're trying to keep the numbers down.
Hi, I just sent a message. If everybody can mute their microphones unless they're actually talking, then we won't have as much feedback.
Oh, okay. Let me go through the group chat. If y'all want to do questions on the chat, I'll do that. Dinkins asked, how is speedy trial affected? Through the administrative order from the Florida Supreme Court, they have suspended or told speedy trial. So basically, that's how it's been affected. Whenever we get back up to regular proceedings, speedy trial time periods will begin to start running again. Dean asked, does our pretrial detention facility generally run over capacity? Or is the overcapacity situation just COVID-19 related? No, generally our jail has been running over capacity for many, 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 many years. We have been working and probably will be trying to present this to the courts. Is an initiative toward bail reform. A lot of other jurisdictions have done that. Judge Khalil can chime in if she wants to about bail reform. But bail reform has been done in a lot of major metropolitan areas with a great deal of success. And so it's something that we were cranking up and had not yet come out. So I don't know how this will all affect the process or not.
I think there might be some long-term impact on it. We've definitely been a lot more lenient, and I can tell you, even on a lot of situations where normally I would be issuing a capias for an arrest, I've not been doing that, just in light of the situation, and I think a lot of my colleagues are doing the same thing.
All right. Okay, one new message. Has there been a decision made on releasing some offenders? Generally, what has been done is most of the release stuff have been in connection with pretrial detainees. These are individuals who've been arrested, but who have not been found guilty. Most of them have a bond posted, but